Nimeketi kwenye kona, muziki ndiyo soda ya kiu cha moyo wangu. Kiangazi kimechoma, barafu siyo dawa, tiba la moyo wangu.
Picha zako zanituliza, sauti yako nayo naisikia. Nataka mie nikupe maua, niweze kupeperuka, nifike kwa jua, nipate kukuona mama.
Well, Kenya Red Cross Society is a humanitarian organization enacted by an Act of Parliament as auxiliary to the government of Kenya during disasters, whether man-made or natural. It acts as auxiliary to the government to bring assistance and aid to the victims of these disasters. Well, the September terrorist attack in Westgate was unfortunate, but as part of its mandate, when there are such disasters, then the role of the Red Cross then is to assist the government, but more importantly is to bring assistance to the victims of those disasters, and that's why we were there. The thing was to quickly mobilize all these branches, people to come out and come and assist, but more importantly was to get our ambulance company, because that's where you have the first response and pre-hospital care, and there are people who are trained, who are paramedics and emergency medical technicians. Well, once we got there and once the teams were all there, obviously we had to assess the security situation. There was, of course, the police and civilian, what you call reserve police, who are at that time busy engaging with the terrorists, and where there was the fighting going on, and the area had been cordoned off and sealed off, but luckily they allowed us to come in. And quickly what I realized was that we had to go in to the shopping mall via the ramp of the car park, because we understood then that was the epicenter of where majority of the casualties were, that were still out there unattended.
There are actually two types of injuries, actually three types of injuries. First injury, the first type was blast injury. Blast injury is basically an injury that you get due to an explosion. So you're looking at shrapnel, burns, concussions, and the sorts. Second type of injury were basically gunshot wounds. And the third type were injuries that people sustain as we're trying to get away. Sprained ankles, broken bones, grazes and scratches as people are trying to get away from the chaos.
On the first day, what we did was we stabilized the patients, made sure that they were all going to the different wards, they were stable enough. It's the next day when we brought in the psychosocial support, where somebody needs to talk to a psychologist about what happened to them. Yeah, we had children that were in the hospital that have lost loved ones or have lost their family. They needed to talk about it. There are certain children that were in the ward that didn't know that some of their loved ones had died. It took about a week for some of them to be told that I'm sorry your mom has passed away, or I'm sorry your sister has passed away.
Psychosocial support involves care that is both psychological and that is both social. Psychological, the mind needs to settle down. You need to start sleeping better. You need to start eating better. You need to start changing the mindset that this is not the end of the world. That these guys perhaps who did the terror attack are not my enemies. That's the mind, the perception. Social is that the first intervention we do after a critical incident is what we call psychological first aid. Now, psychological first aid focuses on the needs of the survivor. So on the Saturday evening, I called the leadership team of the Kenya Psychological Association. I said, guys, tomorrow, whatever is happening, let us meet either at Westgate or wherever else. By Saturday morning, we knew that Visa Oshawa was open. And so we went to Visa Oshawa, and then on Twitter, on whatever, we called other members of the Kenya Psychological Association. And so began the intervention. The approach that we used is what I call psychological first aid, and that's an internationally accepted approach. Sit with someone, ask them what their needs are, connect them to resources, and then listen to their psychological needs that they are bringing out at that particular point. Later on, you tell them, if symptoms persist, seek doctoral advice. The confidence that we want to give to Westgate survivors that we are still handling is that we are there. The Kenya Red Cross program is there.
We knew hospitals were inundated with casualties, and the idea of deciding to do a blood drive the following day was just to bring the Kenyan spirit back. So it was a decision that we made very quickly as Kenya Red Cross to mobilize and to announce that, and we thank, of course, the media who were able to pick that up very quickly. And the first morning at Kencom House on Saturday, I think Sunday, we underestimated the spirit of the Kenyan people. With the numbers of people that came out, was just overwhelming for us. So that's why when we decided to do it the following day and go to Uhuru Park, a much larger place, a larger facility, and we were just overwhelmed on that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of that week, where we had another 5 days, and we had Kenyan corporate, private people, organization coming in droves to donate blood in the most peaceful manner. Well, so it was the disaster itself on Saturday, it was the blood drive on Sunday, and already by Monday people are coming to us to say, what can we do? I think there were a number of people who came to me and asked me, do you want to do a fundraiser for this event, like we did 2 years earlier under Kenyans for Kenya. And it took time, but we agreed to do that. And within a matter of 2-3 days, we were able to set that up. So again, we had talked to Safaricom and agree with them if they would provide us the platform. And they said, yeah, they'd be able to do that. So quickly, we set up an M-Pesa number where they could send money. At the end of the day, we collected close to 149 million Kenyan shillings. And we then decided to set up a task force that would manage this process independently and transparently.
Well, the task force was a team of people who the Red Cross pulled together to manage, first of all, the collection of funds, but then more importantly, the disbursements of the fund. Actually, you know, this particular fundraising activity for Westgate was one of the fastest. So once you've got the money, you have to manage the disbursements of that money and how you spend it very, very carefully. Actually, even more carefully than we would spend our own money, because the people who were donating were people who really didn't have it. So the task force comprised of clearly the leadership of the Kenya Red Cross, Safaricom, Aga Khan, we had Avenue, we had Nairobi, the ambulance providers, so not just the Kenya Red Cross, but also the St. John's Ambulance. Auditors have a reputation to keep. They're also the professionals in ensuring transparency. And so our view was, let's bring Deloitte on board. The other way of ensuring transparency, of course, is to report and to keep telling people what you're doing. No, we haven't dispersed all of the funds because some people need long-term medical care, so there's some money which has been put aside for them. There's counseling which is still ongoing, and there's money which has been put aside for that. We have started to disperse money to families of the deceased, and we're also dispersing money to everybody who had been affected, irrespective of which social status they'd come from. But that money is currently being dispersed. It currently sits in a bank account and is earning interest in the usual way. But we didn't expect to have all of the money dispersed by a fixed date because of the long-term care which would be required.
Deloitte had a conversation with Safaricom and with the Red Cross, and we offered to provide assurance services to essentially ensure that the monies that were being raised were going to be fully accounted for and managed in a way that the stakeholders, those who had contributed the monies, would be satisfied that the money had been put to good use. And therefore, Deloitte offered on a pro bono basis to verify the collections that were being made, to verify what they were being used for, to carry out some kind of audit and provide a report at the end of the day to confirm that the monies that were raised to support the Westgate costs had been properly accounted for. And the way we did this essentially was that we got the records from the banks, from Red Cross, from Safaricom. We ascertained who had provided what service. So we received records from the hospitals, from the blood donor service, and any other parties that had rendered service. And we reviewed those records to ensure that what they were saying was indeed correct and had happened. And at the end of the day, we prepared an account of all the monies that were received and how they were used. And we tendered this report to the steering committee. We as Deloitte were part of the steering committee and therefore were involved in all the discussions that took place around how this money was being raised and what it was going to be used for. So our role in Westgate was that A, we were a member of the steering committee, and B, we offered professional services, including the verification that the expenditure for Westgate was indeed as was reported.
Well, up to date, which is now into February, we are still focused on clearing the hospital bills or those who are hospitalized, and many who are still undertaking outpatient care. So a lot of the resources have gone into medical bills, as was expected.
The assurance that we would give Kenyans is that Deloitte, as a well-respected professional services firm operating to professional standards, did adopt the same procedures that we use in our usual work to confirm that the monies that were contributed were properly recorded and received, and that they were applied for the purposes for which the steering committee determined that they would be applied, and that was verified, and the final records have been submitted to the steering committee, and the balance of the monies is sitting with Red Cross to manage as required.
There are some people who need additional livelihood support. They lost everything. And one, we have decided to give a small kitty, a small token to those who are hospitalized, an amount of 50,000 to each individual who we've identified who is hospitalized, and an amount of 200,000 to all the families who lost someone. So that again is still a process that's still undergoing. We have certain criteria that they must obviously, because we have to identify and verify as best as possible that these resources go to the right people. So if it's a spouse or a parent or a child, they must bring in the required documentation. This must be verified against the lists that we have, and then the process for payment is undergoing. So far we have gone about 50% because some of the people are hard to find. There was a number of events and activities that were held just in recognition. The Blankets and Wine organizers came to us. It was soon after Westgate. They actually had thought of cancelling the event but decided to move forward, and I commended them for that. They then made it a fundraiser and they donated their whatever takings they were able to get to the kitty, which now, as I said, is put together with a broader kitty of all the resources. Friends of Karura was one. It was a very moving event. It was organized actually by the Friends of Karura, but they invited us to participate as Kenya Red Cross to get the word out, and to also ensure that, you know, some of the people who we knew had been impacted or lost a loved one were included in that. They planted 70 trees as a memorial for all the lives that had been lost. Families of the bereaved families were invited to come and actually partake.
One thing we can promise is that we will be there. And once we're there, we can always then react to the situation and make sure that we mobilize support, We will make sure that we're there to provide much needed relief at the beginning. We'll make sure that then, going forward again, people that are affected get the kind of support they need to get. It may be psychosocial support, it may be, tracing their loved ones, all those kinds of things.
Those who saw the images, those who sometimes have gone through previous trauma, and so they can access this at 3 sites in Nairobi, which is 3 of our branches in Nairobi downtown, Parklands and Karen Langata.
When it comes to the issue of preparedness, the question that should be asked, do we have a disaster policy in this country? For the last 15 to 20 years, we've been working on developing a national disaster policy, but unfortunately up to today it's not been finalized. And that's something that we all have a responsibility for, to ensure that we can do this. It's not for lack of ideas, it's not for lack of people with the know-how, it's not for lack of resources, whether human or material. It is for us to be able to stop the talking and start walking, and walking the talk that would deliver us a better response mechanism.
Kenyans, the well-wishers, they came out and gave of themselves the blood for the first time ever, and I think this has been mentioned. Kenya met its monthly target of over 16,000 units, which we never have before since independence. I think I would just like to commend and thank everybody who, despite the fear, despite the threat, came out on the very next day, if not on that day, to do their very best. We have unsung heroes like the Visa Ashwa, who at the time, through the whole night, fed the defense forces, brought resources. I mean, you cannot even thank them enough, because people did things from their hearts.
We have gone through a very difficult phase, and I hope this doesn't happen again. For that, everybody has to come up and, as I said, everybody has to be vigilant about their surroundings, what is happening. And if there is anything, they should inform the relevant authority.
To the Kenyans, put away fear. Let's put away stereotypes. Don't go pointing to someone dressed in a particular way and say, oh, there they go. No, 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 no. We are one as a nation. Hold hands with other people. Don't wait until you crumble, then you look for help. Offer help to someone else who might be crumbling.
Nimeketi kwenye kona, muziki ndiyo soda ya kiu cha moyo wangu. Kiangazi kimechoma, barafu siyo dawa, tiba la moyo wangu.
Picha zako zanituliza, sauti yako nayo naisikia. Nataka mie nikupe maua, niweze kupeperuka, nifike kwa jua, nipate kukuona mama. Nimeketi kwenye kona, moyoni sina supa ya gari la moyo wangu. Ndugu zangu wanalia, kuomba tunaomba, hizi enzi za machozi. Picha za